QPR 1, Borough 4. Where do you even start with that? I'm so sick of watching this team put in a shift against top 6 sides and then dishing out rubbish like that. I'd usually set these videos up with the context of the fixture by telling you that Borough have been consistently inconsistent this season, that they've been good enough to race to a 3-0 lead by half time against Norwich 2 games ago, but bad enough to let in 3 in the second half and then ship another 3 away at Coventry the following weekend. Or I'd talk about QPR's 2 changes from their best performance of the season on Saturday, with Santos taking the place of Ashby and Saito coming in for Smith, before going through the various rights and wrongs of our display. But this was a showing that doesn't warrant going through it with quite the same fine-tooth comb as usual, and all of that context is redundant, because this was the worst display we've seen under Cifuentes since he joined a year ago, and it doesn't matter whether you think it's the manager's tedious style of play, the data signings, or the 26-year-old CEO, it's all wrong from bottom to top, and we're only headed in one direction. You can't even single out a particularly bad player, because they were all poor in their own individual ways. And we were set up to fail from the start because we lined up with a right back at left back, a centre mid at centre back, a left winger at right wing, and a centre back at right back. The maddest thing about QPR is that they absolutely screw your ability to tell whether a team's any good or not. Are Borough the real deal, or did we just make them look like it? This will probably sound delusional, and I say this with full respect to Carrick's side and Borough fans, because they were 100 times the team we were on Tuesday night, but they didn't look all too special in the first half with a number of mistakes they made. But the reality is they didn't need to look special, because when you're playing a team that doesn't press, challenge, tackle, or hassle for the ball, it's a ticking time bomb. You only have to watch Osman, Kakai, Regen, Havertz, Santos' defending for the first goal for the perfect example of that, if you can really call it that. I'm sorry, but after that first half, that's a bloke that doesn't have much of a future in a Rangers shirt. As I said though, he's not the only one. 2 balls it took for their second goal, an ailing ground pass from his own half that cut through Chair, Morgan and Santos simultaneously, and a Finazaz cross that looked so easy for Phil to block it that I looked away before Conway even had time to tap it in. I take it back, Sam, you're not a centre-back, maybe we'll try you up front on Saturday. The most painful thing of all is that this Borough team was complacent a number of times and were there to be pressured at the back. It led to a couple of chances right before half-time, but someone wearing a Seny Dieng shirt was quick to parry efforts from Seller, Madsen and Varane, though all of them were in his general direction on second viewing. You could have made 5 changes at half-time, but even 2 was impressive by Cifuentes' standards. Santos was taken out back to be put out of his misery, with Saito, already out of position at right wing, now moved out of position to left back, and Lucas Anderson meanwhile replaced Elias Chair, who looked injured, ineffective and totally disinterested in that first half. For some reason, Borough didn't decide to come out in the second half and blow us out of the water immediately, which they so could have, and that complacency was still there at times, but Christ, we made it look as hard as possible. Do you think it would hurt every now and then, when getting in a position to cross the ball first time rather than checking back, when 2-0 down? It happens so often from every single player in this team that it can only be down to coaching, because it's absolutely baffling at this point. Lo and behold, the goal came from a corner with a Dunn and Cook tried and tested routine with a literal cross into the box, but even then we're so poor we still needed a Borough player to put it in the back of the net for us. Still, it doesn't matter, you're 2-1 down, you've got one back, you've put a bit of pressure on. How about putting your only other forward on the bench to either replace or line up next to your invisible striker? No, we'll wait until 85 minutes for that one. And bloody hell, the substitutions. Colley, if you remember that guy, came on at 76 minutes to replace Kieran Morgan. Granted, he's 18, he's played 166 minutes in 3 days, but now your whole midfield is out of shape because you've put a 10 on for a defensive midfielder. Okay, so that means Madsen, and yes he was on the pitch, is now sitting next to Varane, where he last played against Pompey and then had to take a 2-game leave of absence because he played so poorly there. Got it. Don't worry though, it's 85 minutes now and we're putting Lloyd on up top with Seller. But now Madsen's off. Right, so that's 2 of our 3 centre midfielders, and now our substitute number 10 is playing next to Varane, because nothing screams sign a contract like that. Anyway, remember how Borough scored with 2 balls in the first half? Well, all it needs is 1 now. Cook pumps the ball up into no man's land, Riley McGree completely cuts him out of the equation, and Latlaf has enough time to put Nardi on his arse twice to make it 3-1. It's all good though, because it's 91 minutes, your third and final centre mid is now off, with Dixon Bonner on to replace him, a player we've not seen since the last time QPR conceded 3 at home. And guess what's about to happen? 4-1, this time with Paul Smith gifting the ball to Barlaser and him curling it into the bottom right with ease. And with that, I'll come full circle to the beginning of this video. The debate all season has been whether this is the fault of the manager, the signings, or the CEO. Well, the reality is it's all of the above and more, because while there's blame to be bared by all of Cifuentes, Nori, and this piss weak blend of football manager signings, our issues run so much deeper. This is our 9th consecutive season in the Championship, and we've finished above 11th just once, and we're now in our third relegation battle in a row. At what point do we need to accept that this club probably just needs to go down in order to rebuild and move forwards? And unfortunately, I don't think we've done enough of that, because having stayed up, we simply weren't in the position to completely redesign this squad. But even then, do we trust the people in charge of that rebuild to do a good job of that in League One? This club desperately needed a change in direction last season, and so I was all up for Hughes and Ferdinand to be replaced. But the decision to hand the keys to a CEO as inexperienced as this is not proving to be a sensible one on the back of the 18 months that this club had endured before his appointment. While we're on the topic of the signings, I must acknowledge head of recruitment Andy Belk. QPR made considerable changes to their backroom staff and personnel over the summer, and yet the same bloke who's been overseeing our signings since we got relegated is still in post. Does it really matter if you're using data for your transfers if the person signing them off is the same one that signed Connor Washington or Lyndon Dykes or now Zan Seller? You have to remember that a year ago some fans were starting to ask for this board to sell up, having appointed Gareth Ainsworth as the man to take us forwards. The reality is they got incredibly lucky with Marty last season, a manager who steered us to safety against the many odds stacked against him, but he's been standing on a sandcastle the entire time, and it still required new signings to get us out of the mess that his predecessor had made, the most impactful of which we decided not to sign this summer in favour of a second right back who's been kept out of the team in his natural position by a centre back and is now injured, having played 2 games in a row at left back. Our performance on Tuesday night and this setup and these substitutions and 1 win in 14 maybe suggest that Cifuentes is out of his depth or he's been sussed out. But how can he possibly succeed with a club as shaky foundations as these? And what manager can come in and actually provide longevity or stability in those same conditions? We actually did have a manager like that 3 seasons ago who kept us steady for 3 years running despite the limitations, and he got ousted for not taking us up, having lost Chris Willock to injury and gone through 4 goalkeepers, all because he pointed out that the club isn't run properly and the kids weren't good enough, which they weren't. Yes, he received significant financial backing that season, and yes, the football was incredibly tedious at times, but the reality is that as a football team, we have not recovered since his departure. So, with a visit to Leeds, our final before the international breakup, where to from here? I think this one only ends one way, unfortunately, and that's with Cifuentes getting the boot sooner or later, rightly or wrongly. But if we're sticking to our CEO's game model and the optimum formation he's identified as the way that we should be playing, it's surely just going to be another manager who plays just like him.